So as you may or may not know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and we are filming this up in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. So this is an amazing state park type system, just a huge amount of land that's basically parkland. So you get to go hiking and you get to go boating, you get to do a lot of great stuff. So I'm able to stay up here and we're having a good time. You'll notice I shaved my beard this morning actually, because the beard was getting to be a little epic. For any of you guys that are thinking about growing a big beard, what I will say is at a certain point your beard becomes so big that it gets difficult to do things like eat and drink. Like I would drink my coffee and little drops of coffee would drip off of it. So had to shave that earlier today, but having a good old time. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is about starting your careers in technology in IT, and the thought. And frankly, I'm a little surprised that I'm suggesting this. Frankly, honestly, a few years ago, I would not have suggested this, but now, time keeps moving on, so I will suggest that this is that you might think about starting your tech or IT career at an Apple store. Yeah, I can't believe I just said that. Did I just say that? I did just say that. Wow, times have changed. So if this was 10 years ago, I would say stay the hell away from an Apple store. I would say that an Apple store has nothing to do with a real tech career. But again, time changes. And now in 2015, this is a place that you may think about going to start your tech career. Because that's one of the issues that people have, right? Is where to start. Once you have 5 or 10 years experience, you can figure it out. It may be difficult to find a job, but you know what you want to do and you know what's going on. The problem is when you're completely new in this industry, the question is, where do you start? Do you start at a help desk position? Do you start a Best Buy Geek Squad? Do you start, where do you guys start at? And so one of the things that I would have you think about is think about starting at an Apple store. There's a number of reasons for this. So I was in the Apple store the other day, and I was sitting there, I was buying a little iPod Touch so that I could use it to go running, and I struck up a conversation with the person that I was purchasing the iPod Touch with in the Apple store and asking the person what it was like to work in the Apple store. Now the interesting thing with this person, I've seen this a lot, is this guy was actually an older guy. He was probably in his 60s and had already retired from his first career doing much more high-level technology. So this is a person that was out there, was dealing with, $100,000, $1 million projects, and now is down working in an Apple store. And I said, why is somebody like you working in an Apple store? And the reason that they said they were working in an Apple store is because it was very good benefits. So this is something to be thinking about, when you're going out there in the real world. You have to worry about things like benefits, healthcare, retirement, and disability insurance, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that this guy said is that although he still has his retirement fund, is making, brings in a decent amount of money from his retirement for good benefits, that you really can't beat Apple. So I sat there and I started talking with him a little bit more, especially about being an old-time tech, about why he liked the Apple store and the whole 9 yards. And he said a few interesting things. Now, the first interesting thing that he said about working in the Apple store is that there really is room for advancement. This isn't the normal way you think about moving up in the IT world. You normally think about you go from the help desk position to the desktop support position to the junior admin position all the way up. Well, the interesting thing is he was saying in the Apple store that you can move up. So you can go from being the little greeter to the salesperson to going into back and doing hardware repair, and that they even have a path to get you all the way out to Cupertino, is that how you say it? Out in California, if you want to go that way. So one of the good parts is if you go to an Apple store, it's not necessarily a dead-end job. That's one of the things that I dislike with a lot of working in retail establishments, is that they're basically dead-end jobs. There's nowhere else for you to go. You're either a salesperson or you're a manager, and that's it. The interesting thing with going with the Apple store is that there is a process. So even if you don't go from the Apple store to another real tech job, that you can slowly move up. That's one of the important things that you need to be thinking about when you're in the tech industry, is that you need to be moving up probably every year or two. So it's okay to start as a salesperson, but then you want to be moving up and moving up and moving up and moving up. And so if you go to something like an Apple store and they have a way so every year or so that you can show advancement, that's a very good thing. So that's one of the things to be thinking about, going to the Apple store. advancement. The other thing that was interesting, and this would be good for you guys, especially when you're new people and you're starting out in the technology world, is one of the things to understand about your career and one of the things to understand about how you will grow as a professional is that the first lessons you learn in this field are going to be the ones that will stick with you forever. Basically. Again, whenever I talk about how I deal with technology projects, you'll notice that a lot of the things I talk about are from my old military experience. So my military experience is really old at this point. It's been a long time since I was in the Army. But the lessons that I learned way back then still stick with me. Again, I say phrases, under promise, over deliver. I mean, that was a big thing that we were pushed in the tech field when we were there. Things like if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you don't have time to do it a second, right? These are the things that follow you, throughout your career. And so the interesting thing, talking to this guy who works at the Apple Store, is he was saying that the Apple Store is the only place he has ever been to as a technologist that nobody says anything bad about the customers in the rear of the store. So if you're a technology professional, been in the technology world, you know that almost everybody talks crap about users, right? We go out there, we support the users, we fix the problem, and then everybody goes back to the server room and just says all kinds of nasty stuff about users. It's one of the sad parts about the technology world. And I argue that it really damages us as professionals because you carry those thoughts, you carry those feelings with you when you go to deal with the users. So if you're in the back room where you're not looking at the users and all you're doing is insulting you're saying the users are stupid, you're insulting the users, all you're doing is dissing and disrespecting the users. Then when you go out to actually interact with the users, you carry that with you. You carry that attitude with you, and then the user feels it, the user knows it, the user already probably doesn't like you because you're a geek, and then it just makes everything worse. If you walk into a situation with a chip on your shoulder, if you walk into a situation already with an attitude, already assuming that the user is an idiot, it just makes things worse. So what this guy was saying is that with the Apple stores, when you go into the back room, that nobody says anything bad about the users. That basically, people at these Apple stores are rather happy with their jobs, and that talking poorly about the customers is really frowned upon. One of the big things that he was saying, I guess it's not written in any rule books anywhere, but he noticed with the interview process, and so this guy had done the interview process twice, and one of the lessons that he said is if you go interview for an Apple Store position, is the big thing is don't argue with anybody during the interview. And he noticed this, so he went to one Apple Store to interview, and there was some technology discussion. And so he started arguing with one of the other people there about whatever it was. And then he said he noticed as soon as he started arguing with the person that the interviewers basically started ignoring him, and then he was never given a call back from the Apple Store. He went in to do an interview at another Apple Store, didn't argue, agreed, elicited information, did all this nice personal stuff with everybody else in the group, and then was able to get the job. The important part here, though, is that the Apple Store really emphasizes the idea that you shouldn't argue with people, you shouldn't look down on people, you shouldn't, all of that nastiness that people think is part of the geek ethos, which it shouldn't be, but a lot of people think it is, and they try to eliminate that from you. Why that's important is because if that follows you throughout your career, that is a very good thing. Again, one of the reasons why I've been successful doing all this weird technology stuff is because I don't argue with the CEO. I don't argue with the end user. If the CEO brings me in to do something that I think is stupid, I'll look at them and I'll say, now you understand the reasons that I disagree with this are these. I am a professional, so I would say that you shouldn't do this, but you sign my paycheck. So if you tell me to do this, I will still do this. I'm just kind of telling you. And that's one of the reasons I was able to do so well, is because, again, I didn't argue with the CEOs. I didn't argue with the users. Didn't get into any of that kind of mess. I just went in there and said, hey, look, as a professional, I would highly discourage this. But again, you sign my paycheck at the end of the day. So if this is what you want, And that's what people like. So one of the things that I would say is thinking about starting your career at the Apple Store is simply having that kind of mentality is very, 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 very valuable. Again, one of the problems with new people, when you're 18 or 19, one of the things you're not thinking about is that you're going to have a long career, right? So if you're 19 and you retire at 65, oh, what is that? You have 46 years of career, right? Especially, I know I'm still pretty young, right? You always look at where you're going to be tomorrow or in a year or in 5 years. One of the things you don't think about is where you're going to be in 46 years. And so if you go out there and you start your job at something like an Apple Store and you learn to be good with customers, you learn to be good with the end users, you learn to keep your mouth shut and not argue, that will follow you for 46 more years, and that can be a very, very, very beneficial thing. I would really argue. Now, the other thing to be thinking about with these Apple stores and all that, so you're sitting there and you're going, Eli, oh, how horrible is our profession now that you're even advising somebody to start the Apple Store. But one of the things that I'll have you think about is that the world has changed in the past 10 years. The world has changed a lot in the past 5 years, realistically. And one of the things that's changed is that consumer computer equipment now is basically the same equipment that's being used in the enterprise environment. So enterprises now are using things like Gmail or Google Apps. Enterprises are using iPhones, right? 10 years ago, if you were going to have some kind of what you would consider a smartphone, you most likely had a BlackBerry device that was very corporate-centric. If that BlackBerry device talked with your servers, it was going to use something called BlackBerry Exchange Server, BES. Which was very specialized. So if you wanted to really understand how enterprise equipment worked, you had to work on enterprise equipment. Apple Store, Best Buy, all that was simply a different world. Yeah, it was computers, but it was a different world. Fast forward to 2015, in the corporate world, people are using iPhones. In the corporate world, people are using iPads. In the corporate world, when I went to go and talk with the folks over at Spiceworks, who's one of my sponsors, the IT department there no longer tells users what computers that the user will get. The user simply requests a computer. So now they're split pretty evenly between people who request Windows computers, people who request Mac books, and people who request Ubuntu systems. So basically users are coming in and say, I want a Mac. Well, the important thing now is that people are actually using the Mac in the enterprise world. So if you have Mac experience, that now translates. Again, 10 years ago, if you worked in an Apple store, it didn't translate to anything in the enterprise world. It's like, ooh, look, you worked in retail. Nowadays, Apple is being used in the enterprise world. The iPhones are being used, the iPads are being used, the Macs are being used. So if you understand how that stuff works, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And again, if you only spend a year or two in the Mac store, that's a decent deal, right? If you spend 10 years in the Mac store and all you're doing is retail, that's probably a bad thing. But if you go in, you spend a year, you really learn the Mac products and you learn the Apple mindset and all that kind of stuff, that can be valuable for you going on. The other thing, kind of like the final thing to be thinking about, if you're thinking about the Apple store, or again, where to start in your IT career, is simply the idea of who will hire you. This is a big issue, especially for young folks. If you're 18, you're 19 years old, is that now that the tech field has normalized, a lot of companies don't want to hire young people anymore. Again, I was 23 years old, doing $500,000 build-outs, flying all over the country. It was amazing. It was great. It was also 15 years ago. That's not the world as it is today. If you're a 23-year-old today, especially in IT, nobody is going to allow you to do that. One of the problems is how do you go out and how do you actually get a job? And the nice thing is, if you think about something like an Apple store, is that they will hire 18-year-olds. They will hire people without college degrees. They will hire people without experience. So again, it's a way to get your foot in the door. If you have a bachelor's degree in computer science, if you have a whole stack of certifications, don't even think about the Apple store. But if you're trying to get your foot in the door, you need to start getting experience somewhere. You need to start building the resume somehow. And so if that's the only way that you can do it, go for it, right? This is really something to be thinking about. So I went in there and I was talking to the guy at the Apple store, and so kind of talking about the Apple Store today a little bit. But the other thing to be thinking about is you should also look at things like Best Buy. You should always also look at things like Verizon. You should also look at all of these other retail consumer computer device type places, because again, trying to get that first year experience is really valuable. If you're going out there and you're waiting tables, that's not really that useful on the resume. You know, if you're going out there and you're mowing lawns, you may make more money than something like the Apple Store or Best Buy, but who the hell cares? It doesn't translate at all. If you're out there, if you're actually selling products, if you're interacting with customers, it's not great. I mean, it's not gonna get you on a retirement track in 5 years, but it is something that is valuable and can be seen as useful to somebody that'll be hiring you in the future. So it's something to think about. The other thing that's nice is, again, if you're going out there for a college, you're trying to get your college degree, going for your associate's degree, transferring up to a bachelor's degree program, one of the issues that you run into is finding jobs that are flexible around your college program. So if you have a couple of day classes and a couple of night classes, the issue is even things like help desk positions, people want you to basically work 40 hours a week. You work Monday through Friday, this shift. So that's a problem. So you're going through one of these college programs and you're like, Eli, I don't have a normal schedule, so how do I get a job? Something to be thinking about is you go for one of these retail establishments. Again, not the greatest thing in the world. As soon as you can find something better, go for it. But it is a way to build up your resume. It's a way to learn about products, and a way to learn about what customers are actually asking for, a way to interact with users. Definitely something that I would find to be valuable. So something to think about. Again, as I say, 10 years ago, I would not recommend that anybody go and take a look at getting a job at the Apple Store or Best Buy or Verizon or any of those things. But in this modern world, the BYOD, bring your own device world, things have really changed. Things really have changed quite significantly. So this might be something useful for you, and especially for you young folks, this may be a way to get your foot in the door. I get a lot of people that say, hey, Eli, I'm 16 or I'm 17 years old. How do I get a job in computers? And I laugh, right? Because who the hell trusts anybody at 16 or 17? It's not about your skill level, right? It's not that you may not have a good skill level. It's that nobody trusts 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds to do anything. So the question is, where do you start from? If even a help desk positions aren't going to hire you, again, you get into that retail environment. If you're 31 years old working in Best Buy, that's probably not the best thing for your career. If you're 16 or 17 years old working in one of those places, then when you get to be 18, when you get to be into college, that's something that you can put on your resume, and it looks decent. Again, remember, when you're dealing with human resources people, when you're dealing with resumes, a lot of it's what's called optics. Optics is how something looks. Does your resume fit into my storyline? So if I'm going to hire a help desk person, or if I'm going to hire a desktop support person, so desktop support people normally start at about $40,000 a year. They get decent benefits, whole 9 yards. They don't have to have a lot of training. They don't have to have a big degree or anything. Basically, they just have to be good people that can fix desktop and small network issues. So if I look and I see two resumes, so I have two 18-year-olds in front of me. One 18-year-old has been out there waiting tables at a Pizza Hut. The other person has been out there and has spent the last year or two working at an Apple Store or working at Best Buy. The story sounds better for that Best Buy person. Okay, so you've been out there, you've spent the last, year or two selling these products. You've been hopefully fixing little computer problems at home for everybody you know. Yeah, it makes sense. I can see this person moving from this position into desktop support. Again, because desktop support isn't a huge position. Whereas you look at a waiter, and you're like, yeah, how does that have anything to do with computers? How does that have anything to do with technology? This person has been selling graphics cards. This person has been selling RAM. This person has been selling iPads and MacBooks and all that kind of stuff. They have the basic knowledge to let me teach them more so that they can move ahead in their career. Again, that's one issue that a lot of people don't understand when they're starting in the technology world, is one of the problems when you're trying to train new people is simply teaching them the verbiage of our field. What is RAM? RAM, what is megahertz, what is gigahertz, what is an iPad, what is a tablet, what is 4G, what is LTE. You know, when we say something like, well, T-Mobile isn't real 4G, do you understand basically what that means, or are you completely lost? If you've been working at a Best Buy or an Apple store or a Verizon, you're going to understand this verbiage so that it's going to be easier to teach you what's going on. If you already know what a motherboard is, then it's easy to show you how to upgrade RAM, right? If you already know the different versions of switches and routers out there, then it's going to be easier to teach you what's going on. If you already know what 802.11ac is, it's going to be easier to teach you. Again, if you have somebody that's been mowing lawns or being a waiter, they may have been making decent money, that may have been good for a lot of things, but they don't have that basic underlying comprehension that'll make it easier for you to be able to train the person and be able to you know, motivate them and get them ahead. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. Go out there. If you can't get a job in help desk, if you can't get a job, desktop support or whatever, again, you need to be getting experience. Again, you need to get the best experience possible. The best experience, right? Right? So I say the best experience, and all you guys are like, yeah, I want to be a systems administrator on a Windows 2012 cluster with VMware and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but is that what's being offered to you? Right? If the best experience possible is a Best Buy or an Apple store, take it. I see far too many people that say, you know, I'm not going to take a crappy job like that. I will only accept. And then they don't get ahead. They don't move anywhere because they will only accept, you know, whatever level, whatever position, but nobody will hire them until they have the basic experience under their belt, and so they just don't go anywhere, and they don't understand why their career is just, you know, spinning wheels, right? So if the best you can get is the Apple Store, or the best you can get is Best Buy, or the best you can get is Verizon, or whatever one of these places are, really honestly think about doing it. Because again, I think it could be very valuable. I think it could be very valuable going into the future. As I've said before, I think the future of technology is going to be far more about client interaction than it was in the past. You know, there were a lot of good geeks in the past that didn't care about the end users. They didn't treat end users nice. They weren't polite. They weren't courteous. They weren't any of these things. And it was okay enough because they could keep the servers up and running, and they kept the systems up and running, so people would deal with rudeness and intolerance simply because you got to keep the infrastructure up and running. Now, as people start moving, as real companies start moving to Google Apps, as real companies move to Office 365, as real companies move to Dropbox and Google Drive, there's going to be less need for that really just technically qualified individual, and more of that basic interaction of just being able to talk to users, figure out what they need, figure out what the best solution is, and go from there. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts for today. Think about consumer technology retail, because it is closer to the enterprise world than it has ever been before in the past. So it might be a valuable way to start your career in a way that many of you guys just haven't thought about before. Again, I mean, like I say, a lot of this is simply what I would call a logic problem. You just think about things logically. If you are a hiring manager, you need to hire somebody for a help desk position, or you need to hire somebody for a desktop support position, and you're looking at two resumes. One resume says the person has been a waiter for 2 years, and the other resume says that that the person worked for the Apple Store or Geek Squad or whatever, Best Buy for 2 years. Who would you hire? All right. So that is what I would say. So think about that. Think about that. Retail technology, consumer technology might actually be a good way to start nowadays.